introduce yourself, who you're with, and then your question.
Harry Weber with Bloomberg. Mr. Craver, I have a question regarding the Aliso Canyon gas leak and any reliability concerns you might have heading from the winter toward summer in terms of reliability with that shutdown and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so maybe just to at least clarify one piece, Southern California Edison is really more of a consumer of gas. Southern California Gas is owned by a different company, so that we don't actually own that. But we do rely on the supply of gas. In fact, I think this came up in one of the questions earlier in the panel. About, at least for us, for Southern California Edison, around a little less than 30% of our power is produced using natural gas. And we buy a lot of power. The power that we buy, a good portion of that also will be produced by natural gas. So it's important to have that reliability. At this point, I haven't heard of any serious expectations of interruptions or difficulties. There are other gas storage components. I think the bigger issue will be, are we going to incur any kind of congestion on some of the gas transmission? But at this point, we're not really hearing that we would have an expectation of any interruptions.
Next question. Okay.
Hello, this is Gail Reitenbach, Power Magazine, and this is mostly for Ted Craver, I suppose. You just came out of a COP21 or post-COP21 session, but I'm wondering if you think across the United States what you think the strongest and weakest drivers are going to be in the near term for a lower carbon electricity system. COP21, Clean Power Plan, customer demands, something else.
I think they all kind of, in a sense, interact with each other. But I think low natural gas prices have probably had more to do with changing the fuel mix, really driving a lot of the decisions by the power industry across the country. I think you probably know the same numbers I do, but just really in the last year, we ended up having natural gas producing more electricity than coal. So I think that's been a very, very powerful driver. The other one is customer preferences. At the end of the day, utility is not, it's really not doing its job, and it will not be very responsive if it isn't listening to what its customers and its communities want. So in our case, we live in California. There's a very strong public policy and consumer attitude towards sustainability, even when it means potentially higher costs. So there was an example I always give. We had a significant ballot initiative several years ago, right at the depth of the economic crisis. And voters really had a choice, stay or halt implementation of the cap and trade system, or go forward with it. And at that time, we had unemployment around 12.5% in California, even higher than that in Southern California. And the voters voted overwhelmingly, 62%, to not halt, but to go forward with implementing the cap and trade system. And so I use that as one of the prime examples that I can think of. Is that's real customers and real economic extremists saying that they want to go forward. It's important as a utility I think, to really listen to what your customers and your communities want you to do.
Next question in the front of the room.
Hi there, Tony Zielinski with Upstream International Oil and Gas Newspaper. This is for Mr. Lien. With regards to Statoil offshore, is the government pleased with its decision not to proceed with, or rather its decision to proceed with the subsea solution in its Snor project?
Well, of course, what has been our main focus was to facilitate the process in the companies that led to utilization of the resources within the necessary time frame. As you are well aware of, the Snorre field is in production already, and the new resources has to be connected to the existing infrastructure before the existing infrastructure has to shut down because of lack of resources in a few years. So that has been our main focus, and so far it seems the new proposal put forward from Statoil with partners seems to be on a very good track, and of course we have to finalize this process when the PDO is put forward to the ministry in hopefully shortly.
Another hand up here.
Hi, Minister. Just following up on that a bit. I'm Brian Scheid with Platts. Generally, or more broadly, how do you see low oil prices affecting Norway's offshore sector? And do you see low oil prices at all eating into Norway's share of the export market?
Well, exports are as high, almost approximately as high in 15 as they were in 14. Of course, the global market is growing, but our resource base is increasingly gas. There are a lot of oily resources left on the NCS as well. But of course, we have seen the challenging oil market hitting investment levels on the NCS reduced by approximately 15% from year to year, from 14 to 16. Of course, the last year is an estimate. And of course, with an economy that is approximately 30% oil, to have a 30% reduction is going to significantly influence the Norwegian economy. But then again, we have $800 billion in the sovereign wealth fund, so the fiscal situation of the national government is still very solid. But of course, for the industry, this is going to be a challenging year.
Last question. We've got a couple more.
Question for the minister. We heard from El Badri today talking about OPEC and reaching out to non-OPEC producers about freezing production, keeping it in place. Wondering what your stance is as a non-OPEC producer about freezing production, or what faith do you put in such pledges or commitments?
I think that what is going to correct this situation is first and foremost going to be the market itself. We see that we have reduced investments in new production, already significantly reduced globally. So I think I trust the market to fix this. And when it comes to our fellows in producing countries and also the consuming countries, we have a lot of dialogue with many countries, both on the producing side and the consuming side. But we don't comment on those kinds of conversations, or the character of those kinds of conversations.
Mr. Craver, this is Elliot Blackburn with Argus Media. I was curious, coming back to Aliso Canyon, is that an asset that you think should be returned to service at some point, or should it be permanently shut?
To be very honest, I just don't feel we're an all-electric company. I don't think I'm really in the best position to opine on the public safety aspects. I just don't have the technical knowledge around that. Of course, from a broader perspective, we're focused on being able to provide a reliable electric service to our customers. That's one of our core responsibilities. In order to do that, we need fuel stock for whatever generation to be able to do that. So certainly having a reliable natural gas system is very important to us. So reliability is one part of the equation. Some of the other parts that you mentioned in your question that really get to, in my mind, to kind of the technical features of that storage facility, the public safety elements, and I'm just not in a position to really opine on that.
Go ahead.
Hello, Alexei Tarasov from Russian American Business Magazine, and I have a question for Mr. Minister of Norway, Mr. Lien. Russia earlier this month submitted a bid to the United Nations to expand its Arctic presence by somewhere in the range of 1.2 million square kilometers. Norway, of course, is a country that has interests in the Arctic. Could you tell us, with the decrease in prices for hydrocarbons, what's going to be the dynamic of oil and gas development in the Arctic region? And then if you could share the thoughts that your government has about the Russian submission. Thank you.
I'm happy to say that as far as I'm aware of, there are no disputes on acreage between Norway and Russia, and of course to comment on a process that is under development in the United Nations is probably not going to be very wise on my side. When it comes to the Arctic, I think it's fair to say that the Arctic is not the same. Depending on what kind of country you are talking about. Norwegian Arctic is totally different than most of Russian Arctic. Greenland Arctic, US, Canada Arctic, because of the Gulf Stream coming from this region of the world to northern Norway, the climate is totally different. Ice-free harbors, ice-free waters. So of course, to develop these kinds of resources with this market situation, it's going to be challenging. But it's challenging in the North Sea, it's challenging in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to be challenging in parts of the Arctic. But there is no, to run industrial scale activity in the Arctic, Norway has been doing for more than 100 years, oil and gas for 35 years, and you don't really need to, it's really nothing compared to the Churchill Sea, for instance.
I just had a quick follow-up for Mr. Craver on the Aliso Canyon question regarding its importance in the gas supply. Is it fair to say, without Aliso Canyon, would you be able to provide that reliable service to your customers that you're talking about? So I understand it from EIA that you're talking about a third of the gas supply west of the Rockies or something like that. It's pretty important in the pipeline.
Yeah, I think, to be frank, most people are trying to really sort out what the implications are, and a lot of that is going to develop out over the next several months here. I mean, for us, what you certainly don't want to encounter are curtailments. But I don't think we know enough at this point about how the system is going to adjust to this, and whether or not we're going to have congestion on some of the transmission lines, gas transmission lines. So at this point, it's just say it's a developing situation. I don't think we really know enough to opine on whether A, it won't be available, or B, whether it would, if it is not available, whether it would end up causing problems on the electric reliability side.
Last question.
Hi, thank you. Just to follow up quickly, Minister, with regards to spending in the offshore, we are seeing a lot of projects deferred or canceled. Is there a disadvantage to Statoil having such a dominant position in Norway's offshore, given that it is looking to cut costs?
Well, but I think everybody is looking to cut costs, and every company, supply and service industry company and operating oil and gas company, being present on the NCS has my very strong support in the work to actually reduce costs. I think one of the reasons why we're in a tight spot at the moment is, of course, the rapid drop in oil price from $150 to $35 a barrel. I think we also have to address some of the issues developing in the industry between 2010 and 2014, when we probably took on some habits that wasn't sustainable, even with an oil price of more than $100 a barrel.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.